Pharmacy and entrepreneurship. Is it water in oil or is it something synergistic? Today, I am joined by Nishan, who is the founder of DevScan, or co-founder, I should say, with his brother, as well as the president of an association in Canada. And in this interview, Nishan will be sharing just a really crazy story about how he saw problems during the pandemic, how he solved them for himself, and how that grew into a business. And now about what is next for him as he is growing his, I would say his venture, because it's quite the adventure of what he shares. I mean, there's so many great insights from his story and his journey, from how he identifies problems to how he identified demand, where's the value, how he positioned his company to be sold. So much great stuff. And at the end of this, you don't want to miss it because I'm going to be breaking down what I learned from this so that you can take these lessons into your career or business or whatever you think is next for you. So with that, let's jump into the interview. Thanks for hanging out with me, Nishan. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Alex.
So what intrigued me about your journey was coming from like the community space and moving into entrepreneurship. And I think whenever I've talked with entrepreneurs, sometimes people listen in and they think like, oh, you are so further off than where I'm at now. I think a lot of people are interested in entrepreneurship, but right now you're right now in the midst of growing this company and while still traditionally employed. And I think where you're at is really interesting because a lot of people tend to, I would say, brag about what they have when they're way off. But right now it's the messy middle, and I'd love to kind of unpack like how did this all happen?
Yeah.
How did you go from traditional community chain pharmacist to building something and being like really creative in what you've created?
Okay, well, we'll start at the beginning.
Yes.
And the message I kind of want to dictate here is that anything's kind of possible. So when you are a pharmacist specifically, you have a degree which allows a level of trust that you don't get with many other professions, right? I mean, of course, someone like a physician gets that kind of level, but our profession itself is allows us to do so many different things, wear so many different hats, work in so many different industries. So where this story started was when COVID started. So COVID-19 happened, and me and my brother were both pharmacists, and we couldn't find at the time any hand sanitizer for our patients. So everybody was coming in, and everything was sold out everywhere, and all our suppliers that we're trying to contact nothing was available. So we were like, oh no, oh boy, like this is a big problem. Let's get to the bottom of this because we want to help with this crisis. So what we did is we literally walked right in, like, to the door of local manufacturers, chemical manufacturers, and said, hey, there's a shortage on this, and how can we mitigate this? And the answer was no, there is no shortage. It's just the players who are established, they're just sold out of their stock, and they have their supply chains have been depleted, right? And then some of these chemical manufacturers who weren't really thinking about the healthcare space. We approach them and say, okay, what's the cost, and how much would it be to produce this? How do we go about this process? How do we get what's called an NPN, a natural product number, which is required in Canada to sell this? How do we go get this officially done? What paperwork do we need? Let's just try to get this in the hands of our patients. So that's where it started from. So we did that. We talked to a few companies.
I was just going to say, I think it's really beautiful and in a good moment to just see that you identified a problem right?
Mhm.
That's all that entrepreneurship innovation really is. It's
Yeah.
just what problems are out there and who can help you solve them.
Yeah.
When you
It could be,
started that,
yeah.
did you were you like, oh, this is a business, or
Mhm.
was it more just about like, hey, I have a need and I need to fill it?
It started with, I have a need. There's a need. I need to fill it. And the reason why it turned out more than it we bargained for in the beginning, was when we figured out all the stuff that we needed to manufacture it. Well, of course, you can't just buy like a small amount, right?
Right.
You have to manufacture a boatload.
Yeah.
Right? So we obviously had to. We're like, okay, we have to put how much money up front? Okay, right? We're coming off the street. They don't really know us, right? Yes, we are pharmacists, but so we had to, invest a lot of capital up front.
Mm.
Um, and so we did that. And we knew that the demand was so high that we're like, okay, we should be fine. But then, when, they ask us where to deliver it and we can't deliver it at our house because it's so much and that we need to get a warehouse to rent a small space somewhere to deliver it, then those costs piling up. Then we realize it's transport costs. How do we go back and forth to deliver to these patients so it kind of was like, okay, we need to sit down and really think about how we're going to distribute this. So that's where it turned from, let's get this into the hands of patients, into let's turn this into a business, because we can't just sell just to patients. The quantity that we produce, we have to sell to businesses, right? So of course, our main priority was to get into patients, which we were able to do just with
Mm.
direct sales. Then we were reaching out to different, whether it's independent pharmacies, using our network first, right? So independent pharmacies, other businesses that were local to us, friends and family who had businesses or just generally wanted it. It was easy to sell at that time, right? But it's like, how do we get this quantity? It was so much, right? We ended up obviously at that point realizing that we need some sort of sales strategy. And that's something that's new to us, right? We've never kind of
Mhm.
looked at that. When you're a pharmacist, you're thinking clinically, you're not thinking like that. So we go about, calling businesses and calling different pharmacy chains. We try to use the pharmacy network because we are so well versed in it. Uh, and we went from there, and at that point, then word started spreading, and we started getting more calls and more sales, and we were able to it's between us both working at a pharmacy, we had to do a lot of work to get this out, to make sure that we get everything to these customers that were ordering it. And at the time, it was, I would say, largely my brother that was doing most of the sales work.
Mm.
And he's kind of a wizard at that, so he was able to get that portion, and get all of it to whoever needed it.
Mm.
From there, we were getting queries because people wanted more than that, right?
Right.
So they're like, oh, you have hand sanitizers, but do you have gloves? Do you have gowns? Right? Do you have all sorts of other PPE? So that's when our gear started turning to go to the next step.
So I know Canada is obviously there's different laws and regulations and things, but when you started on this path, did you get clear quickly about like, hey, is my employer going to be cool with me doing this? I know that a
Hmm.
lot of people stop themselves from starting just because
Hmm.
they're concerned about what their current employer is going to do or say about
Hmm.
whatever this endeavor is. Was that an
Yes.
issue for you?
Not necessarily, no, because we didn't sell. Our employers didn't sell hand sanitizer like this, right?
Mm.
And we realized that we're not interfering with the same customers. So if we're selling to patients, it's because we were working with other independent pharmacies along with it, right? Because we would pick up, we have friends who have own pharmacies, and we would try to dabble in different types of retail pharmacies to kind of make sure that we become the best versions of ourselves. So we would
Sure.
pick up locum shifts, right? And then so you end up with a huge base of patients and pharmacies that 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 need the product, right? So that's kind of where we stem from. So
Mm.
we'll see a little bit later on down the line that we actually, with our main employer, we ended up selling to them as well. So there ended up being no conflict of interest because they were able to
Hey,
buy from us, right? So
wow, that's impressive.
that was yeah. Um,
Okay.
so as I was saying, we started to look at different things because we were getting queries for all the different products. So whether it was
Mm.
gowns, whether it was masks, masks was the big thing, especially then, right? To get KN95 or N95 masks was so difficult at one point. And even surgical masks were like, hospitals were buying everything, and major organizations were overpaying for them so that they can get these stocks. And so it was hard for the regular everyday person to get it. And that's who we were representing at the time, trying to get it into the hands of the everyday person. So, whenever we were asked for something new, we just said, well, let's look for it.
Figure it
Let's
out.
find how do we end up doing this? Right. So,
Yeah.
things from there. And this is the thing, right? Looking for that need is something that anybody can do at any time. If you're a retail pharmacist, you have patients. Like one thing, um, I was always thought about, and then until I discovered there was somebody who a colleague of mine who decided to do it because I was talking to them about it. Is when you get pill splitters, for example, at retail pharmacies, a lot of times your patients say, hey, it's not cutting well, it's not cutting properly, and most of the time it comes as sponsored things, right? You get all these, like a lot of drug manufacturers will send you a bunch of pill splitters and you just hand them out, right? Whereas it's not thought about to say what's the best type of pill splitter, who's engineering these things to make it best for their patients, right? Well, I was always getting a lot of complaints about the ones that we're giving out, and then I talked to other pharmacists and say, yeah, we all get the same thing. Well, one of my colleagues said, well, I'm going to do something about this, right? And they went and that's what it is, just finding a need, and then they worked with the manufacturing company to create something different, and something unique, and then from there that ballooned into a business, right? So, as you were saying, is just keeping an eye out for things,
Mm.
and the key ingredient is just do it. It's easier said than done, and whether it's your personal life that holds you back, whatever that may be. It's really important to note that in the end, if you just take the first step, right, it always gets easier to take the second step, right?
Mm.
It seems daunting because everyone looks at the finish line, right? Oh, I want to be at this, rather than saying, hey, let's just take it one step at a time, stay in the moment, but be aware of where the finish line is, but don't concentrate on that. Concentrate on the next step right in front of you. So if you do that, right, you're knocking down small pebbles until you get the avalanche to form.
Mm.
And that's the way I look at things, and that's the way I approach things. Is And especially in business, it's very important to do that. Is to make sure you tackle the small things first, gives you some momentum, and then you can start tackling the big things, the medium, and then the big things. So it's a mentality thing as well. So you wake up in the morning, do the simple things, do your bed in the morning, brush your teeth, and all the little things that you do that start the momentum, the easy things. When you check your emails in the morning, you check the easy. There's anything that takes 5 minutes, you do that first, right? You get the little things out of the way. So your brain, you start getting the accomplishments done in the day. That keeps you moving forward. And that's the same thing when you start moving into business. You make sure that you do that simple phone call, to say, hey, do you know anybody who may have gowns, or call the company. Hey, you manufacture gowns. You don't have any to sell. Well, who's your manufacturer? Do you mind if you give me the number of a manufacturer, or a rival of yours company, that, because honestly, if you can't get it, I need somebody to get it. And most of the time, if you just ask, people will tell you. Or if you just go out and try to do things on your own, it's way more difficult. So you have to rely on your network and not be afraid to ask.
Mm.
And that's all we did, right? So when it came to going for gowns, or going for masks, or going for different types of PPEs, you just have to ask. And with COVID, it was a unique time space where everybody's trying to help each other because it was such a revolutionary thing, this new pandemic, and no one knew how to deal with it. And everyone's trying to kind of help each other even while making money. So it started with us just following the requests of customers saying, well, I don't need that, I need this. I don't want that, I want this. Okay, let's make some phone calls, let's do some emails. And it balloons from there. And the more you do, the more contacts you have, and then the more people want to buy in bulk. So it ended up coming to a point where, fast forward a little bit, we're organizing shipping containers from China or from Korea of these products. So that's quite a huge amount, right? So we end up obviously having to put more collateral in, and more capital. But of course, we're using that initial capital as we're selling things, putting it back in, right? So, and I mean, at this point, it may seem big, but you got to remember, in business, until you take a dime out, you haven't made anything, right? So we're doing all this without earning a dime, doing all this on our own time, but knowing that we have an end game, because we know that there is more and more people that need these things. And we also knew the finish line too, because we knew COVID's not going to last forever, right? So you have to have an exit strategy. So that's where I'll talk to you about a little bit of a pivot.
So you started off making some chemicals and then expanded to basically pandemic medical needs, right?
Yeah.
The pandemic is over, I think.
I would say so.
Yeah, they keep waffling and stuff. So the beginning of almost every business it's never the same, right? It changes dramatically what you end up started versus what you're actually doing now. So how have things shifted for you and your co-founder?
So the way that we shifted it, so we basically leveraged what the need was into kind of a technology-ish company. So it was really interesting, because one of the things that was requested was COVID tests. So rapid tests was a huge demand for rapid tests. Every company needed it. Every airline needed it. Anyone that wanted to know, am I positive, am I negative? If I have one cough, let me test myself. So it was a huge initiative that everybody needed to get. Well, of course, we're getting asked about that. So it starts with, let's try to find a manufacturer that does that. Let's try to import more rapid tests and distribute it across Canada. And as we started doing that, and we started importing it and selling it, pharmacists were given the authority to do rapid tests for travel. So at the time, and I'm sure you remember, anytime you needed to travel anywhere, you needed to get a negative test.
Yeah, I
right?
remember. It was annoying.
Yeah, it was annoying, and it was pharmacies that, there were pop-up clinics, but pharmacies both in U.S. and in Canada. It was pharmacists and pharmacies that were giving these tests out, right? They were administering this test and giving a result and signing that document, because we are trusted professionals to give that result. So, we started with thinking, and we're like, okay, like, if we're going to do this, how can we leverage what we do? We're both pharmacists. Yes, we're doing this import-export thing, but let's use our degree. And this is where we say you got to use your degree, because anytime that you can do something, anytime that your degree can be used for something, whether it's an injection, whether it's prescribing, that's an opportunity. That's instantly an opportunity, whatever that may be, however that manifests. That's for everyone to figure out, but there's always an opportunity in everything. So with that, you have a question?
Yeah, I was going to ask, so by shifting to the testing, did you discontinue all the other things, all the other,
No.
I guess, SKUs of products that you had developed?
No, this is where we split our avenues in two. So my brother continued with the traditional, what we started with, and continued that path. I launched a new a new product, basically an online service. So the first thing that I looked at to see was, okay, look, we both can't do each thing right here. We have our resources and we'll help each other, but I'm going to use our resources to build this, and you use our resources to continue this and grow what we were already doing.
Okay.
So where I started was, okay, we want to do something different, right? Anybody can go into a pharmacy to get a rapid test, but you can, I saw in other countries that you are allowed to do virtual rapid tests. So that is getting your like to kind of like we are doing now, right? Just over the screen. I watch you do your rapid tests. You do a swab.
Right.
You keep it on screen, and then I give you a result. Well, I was doing that when I was traveling abroad, and I said, well, why can't we do that in Canada? There was nobody doing that in Canada at the time. So we had to obviously go through the regulatory hoops. So I had to talk to Health Canada. I had to get all the red tape. So it was quite a bit of paperwork going back and forth, making sure that we get vetted, that we are doing the right thing, that we're allowed to do this. What's our process like? Creating a robust process where we could observe a rapid test virtually and get a result, and not only do that while ensuring that it is an accurate rapid test, and ensuring that privacy does not also get compromised, because that's a big thing, right? If we're just doing a regular Zoom call over something, well, that's not the best way. You have to figure out what is the best way to ensure security, ensure accuracy. And the
Mhm.
way that I ended up building it out was, well, let's first of all make sure that the rapid test has to come from us, right? So we ship it out. It's got a lot number. It's got everything that we are giving you, so that when we are doing this on screen, you can show me the product. It is the exact product that I sent you. I can match it all up, and it never leaves the screen. If it leaves the screen, it's devoid. So I had to be very stringent, and this is something that Health Canada was doing sample runs with us and making sure that everything was up to par. So once we got that certification and everything was good, well, that's when we had to really get the ball rolling. So how do we even reach anybody to let them know? Right. We had to.
Yeah. What'd you do?
Yeah. Well, it started obviously because I only had small capital to work with in this scenario. Yes, we had capital, but we had a lot of what it goes in, what goes out, right? So I took a chunk, and I was like, I have very little to work with, but I have to make this work. And it all starts with using a network. So I have throughout the years friends who work at different companies. So this friend of mine worked at this major power company, and I approached him saying, hey, look, connect me with your boss or your boss's boss, because I know that with these companies, in order for you to go into work, you need to get a rapid test, right?
Hmm.
So I have regulatory approval. Well, let's create a price for you, right, where it's cheaper than anywhere else. It's virtually observed, so it's convenient, and there's a direct link for you and your employees to do that every day or once a week or however much they need to do it. And that's where I kind of started. So it's reaching out to my whole network, anyone I knew that worked for any company, and not being afraid. Even I haven't talked to you 15 years. Hey, maybe something went awkward 10 years ago. It didn't matter. I had to do it. I had to make sure that this thing succeeded, and
Yeah.
that's where it was nonstop calling, emailing, LinkedIn, whatever it took to talk to somebody, anybody who's willing to have that conversation and explain, look, this service that you do, there's no obligation to you. We don't need an exclusive contract, but if you want this, look at this setup. I'll do a demo for you. I'll explain to you how it works, and this is the price, or we'll create a pricing that works for you, right? So not only did I do that, but I launched a public facing platform where anybody in the public can go and they can book it, right? And nobody can just find you on Google, right? So I had to learn SEO, which is search
Hmm.
engine optimization, which is the most difficult thing on the planet. Um, it is so complex to learn that, but I had to do it all myself at the time. So it's a lot of YouTube videos, a lot of reading, and then learning what works, what doesn't work, what keywords work. And then obviously that's expensive. That is the most expensive thing. I've never seen anything so expensive, and no wonder Google makes so much money, because each click costs a lot of money. And then when you compound the clicks, it ends up being like oodles and oodles, and you end up questioning. I ended up questioning, am I doing the right thing? Because I'm spending so much here, but I don't see anything coming back. But as word grows, as all these companies that initially say, hold on, I don't know about this, at least you're putting your name in there, you're throwing your hat in the ring. Well, somebody's going to call back, and over time, more and more companies started calling, and word would spread. And then that's when I had to do less of the calling, and then I was getting the calls to say, hey, we need something now, and we need something today. Well, I would streamline the process where we can set it up instantly. Like it would take me 30 minutes maximum to set up your unique link with your unique price. Go through the agreement, the privacy, all that.
Mm-hmm.
By the time I was seeing all the numbers come in, right? I was definitely making more than the Google ads. Though without the Google ads, honestly, it would have been just a mind blowing profit margin. But that's the key, right? That's why search engine optimization is so expensive, because it is an extremely expensive thing to do.
Yeah, it is. Word of mouth, social media, all that stuff is a lot cheaper, but can be time intensive.
Very expensive.
You switch to this, you start up this
Mhm.
new revenue service. Are the requirements in Canada still that you have to have these things in order to travel?
No, it's actually almost nowhere. So why did I do this knowing that there's an end? So that's the key, right? So I knew that there is an end, and I knew my initial concept was to say, well, look, as long as we can make this profitable and be able to pay off any initial startup costs with this endeavor, then I'm happy with that, and then I can learn what I've learned. Well, the good thing that happens is, as you grow, you learn, you meet more people, more business owners, more people who are interested in what you do. So whether it's venture capitalists, C-suite people, they take notice when you're a business owner and you're making waves. Well, that's when people take notice. So of course, at that point, it got to that point because we had airlines using our service. So WestJet is a major airline in Canada. They were using our service for all their flights, all their employees, any employee flight. So that's all the flight attendants, and including the CEO, who I would have conversations with while I was doing his rapid test. Major companies that we had signed on. End up talking to a lot of executives because they're using our service too, right? So with that, the name grows, your company grows. And at the peak of it all, right, the key, what we were being approached for, and when we was talking to all these executives, is like, well, how did you build this platform? It's the platform and the customer base, right, that you have. And that's when I started to talk to a few other companies that had a much larger a capital base, and they were doing the same thing, right? Of course, we were one of the first to get these approvals, and then our approvals, not only we did Canada, we got US, UK, lots of Europe, Asia. I went through all the regulatory processes between all these countries, so that we had people coming doing virtual tests with me sitting in Canada, or a pharmacist that I hired sitting in Canada doing this from Finland, or like a Finnish person, or a person in Kuala Lumpur was able to use our service because we got the regulatory approvals with these countries. That was a whole thing in itself, which I don't need to dive into, but because there's a lot of government NDAs that had to be signed there. But with that, obviously your company takes notice, and that's another thing to say. Like, I could have been happy doing just Canada. And this is something I want to preach to everybody listening is, you always look beyond the box, look outside the box, because I could have been happy with Canada and US flights, but I thought, why not Europe? Why not Asia? Why not South America? How can we leverage this? And I know somewhat the process here that I've done here, so why can't I do it there? So that's what I did. And it's hard, but it's hard because it's a lot of work. It's a lot of things don't require a lot of difficult work. Like let's say that, as a pharmacist doing sterile prep of chemotherapy, that's difficult work, right? Because the knowledge behind it, to learn, going to school, that's the difficult part, right? But once you understand it, you do it, right? Then the work is easy. It's just difficult to do it properly because everything has to be measured correctly. You have to do a lot of paperwork. Well, similar to this, it was a lot of work to go through all the regulatory processes and read the documents that have to be read, have the meetings, but it's not particularly difficult to do. It's a lot to do, right? And that's the key that people find difficult. It's the getting over the hump because there's so much to do, rather than saying that it's a more difficult thing to do, right? So it's having the willpower to just do it when you have to do it, and not procrastinating when you feel like you want to, like, look me up that mountain, that I got to climb that big mountain. So getting that to that point, we get approached by companies at that point saying, well, we want your customer base, we want your technology that's behind this. And that's where my gear started turning to say, hey, if I see the end to this tunnel. And if there are companies that will buy out this portion, well, we're gonna find a number that works for us. And that's how I pivoted that side to say, when we got approached, we got the right number. We said, all right, here you go. But we want to keep this, and this is what you can have. And that's how we.
By this, you mean the manufacturing?
No, the manufacturing, that and import export, that stuff is still running. It's still on the side.
Right. So
But
you
it's
kept
the technology
that. You
part.
sold the technology.
Yeah, people wanted the underlying customer base, the technologies, the contracts, the regulatory approvals. That's what companies wanted.
Gotcha.
And that's what obviously they're looking for, right? Because they don't have to do the work. Somebody's done the work for them, so they're paying for all the work. So the good thing is we were able to keep our name. We were also able to keep, if we wanted to, do more rapid tests, but we had to, all our customer base and all the regulatory approvals, we've sold that off.
Gotcha.
And that was a great end to that endeavor. So that, as a startup, we knew there was an end, right? And to this day, it's a very small part of what we do. That's now, we're transitioning into what's the next step now, all right? Because we've done that. We've made what we wanted. We've made more than we wanted, actually.
I think that's an easy transition to what's next then.
Yeah.
What are you working on?
So what we wanted to do is, because we understand, and I understand the technology side of things, and he definitely understands, he's got a very good business mind, is where can we invest now, right? It's like when we want to do this, it's so much work to do that, and we want to still be pharmacists, so we still want to work as pharmacists and do what we do as pharmacists. But how can we make our money work for us? And that's when you have enough contacts in this world, you end up talking to enough people to say, okay, this is where we can invest our money. Now we're the ones who are approaching companies and say, hey, what do you do, and how can we invest in you? And that's where we ended up moving our business to. Okay. It's a great end to how we did that. So but the key here is to say, like, we found a niche, we found something that pharmacists can do, and we pushed to make it larger and bigger and better, and we leveraged our degree. And I think that's what I always tell students every time I see a student and I ask them, well, what do you want to do? Well, I want to work for this corporation or that corporation, or this, like, large chain banner, or that hospital network. Well, it's like, well, have you thought about what else you can do? Do you know what pharmacists can do right now? How much is coming? What's the future of what we do? There's everything coming from pharmacogenomics, which is huge, right? So personalized medicine is coming. Well, how can you dive into that? Whether it's specific manufacturing of individual dosing packs, like an individual capsule packs, which is being done by a company called Doser, which is incredible. where can you go? Where can you see your niche? So I always tell that to students that I talk to, and tell them you have to look outside the box, because I mean somebody's going to do it, but it might as well be you. And even
Mm.
if you've been a pharmacist for 15 years and doing the same thing, there is no limit to what you can do. There is no ceiling. There's so much you can do with your degree. So, a lot of people aren't happy with it's a stressful job, especially in retail. Very stressful job, right?
Yeah.
So it's really saying, where can I go? What can I do? How can I push the envelope? And I think anybody can do it. Anyone, even like what you've done here.
Yeah, there's a lot of problems, but there's not a ton of people trying to solve those problems.
Mhm,
Um, there's definitely a lot of people who are aware of them.
mhm,
And, I think if there's any wisdom from your story, it's definitely seeing where the biggest demand is, right?
mhm,
Where are the problems and who's willing to pay to solve those problems?
mhm,
Um, there are urgent and dire problems. And I think a lot of people really make the mistake of picking problems that aren't that urgent or important,
mhm.
right? But you won't know that until you get started, until you
Yeah,
just get your hands dirty and get rejected, get told yes, get told no a lot. But if you just spend all your time researching or thinking about things, nothing will ever happen.
that's
Um,
right.
I think it's a really interesting story of what you've gone through,
Hmm.
right? No matter how you brand it, is uh, it's either you just let the problem happen or you take advantage of what it is.
Hmm.
Because however you treat the problem doesn't mean anything about you or your character. It's just all
Hmm.
about mm, supplying solutions to people, and you
That's
did
right.
that wonderfully. Um, as we wrap up here,
Hmm.
and as you're like looking into that next thing,
Hmm.
how can people reach out to you? Maybe someone who has an innovative solution and is looking for someone
Yeah,
to
yeah.
be an investor. What would be a great way for them to reach out to you?
Well, the best way is on LinkedIn. So if you look up my name, Nishan Devani, on LinkedIn, you can just message me or connect with me and reach out from there, and then we can expand out from there. Um, and that's usually how I go about things now, because LinkedIn is such a powerful network.
Mm,
Um,
yeah,
and
I think that's how we
and
connected, isn't it?
yes, that's right. I believe
Yeah.
so.
Okay.
And it's really interesting because the way I approach things is, when someone asks me, I'm always open. I'm always ready to help. When I started this journey, and I was like, when I signed that WestJet contract, when I signed the Spark Power contract, it's to me at that time, I was like, I can't believe that they believe in me, right? You know, and that
Got
they
some
are
imposter
happy
syndrome
to,
going on.
yeah, they're happy to be there to do. They said yes, well, let's do this, right?
Yeah.
um, and it surprised me, and it'll surprise everyone to say, look, I'm willing to help anybody for, lend an ear, right, for any situation. So yeah, anybody who wants to reach out for anything, I'm always open to help and talk, because I know what that feels like, right? To
Mm,
say, someone helped me and gave me advice, because even while I was doing this, like, I had plenty of friends who I called, who were successful in building a business or in sales or in something, to say, hey, how do you do this? What do you do? Like, what's your advice? This is what I'm doing. Give me any advice, anything, right? And I called quite a few friends and colleagues that, from when I was young all the way till recent, to say, hey, I need some advice. And again, that goes back to just ask, right? To
mm,
say you can't be afraid to ask,
yeah.
because if you don't ask, you're never going to get anything, right?
Mm,
As they always say, if you always go to, if you're flying anywhere, you're flying commercial, just go up to the desk right before you board, say, hey, you got any upgrades, right? And every so often you'll get one.
beautiful. Um, I don't know if I have any more questions.
Hmm.
I think it's a really interesting place that you're at right now, like in your career. Um, you exited at the right time, right? And
Hmm.
now you're looking for the next thing. Um, Have you ever thought about doing like a Shark Tank kind of competition?
I don't think I'm there yet. I don't think I'm there yet. Like that kind of, like, are you saying sitting on the panel there?
I, I mean, I don't mean like a real like $1 billion kind of thing, but I mean, um, a real simple way to like find new opportunities would be just like host a fun competition.
There you
Get a
go.
bunch of
That's a
people
good idea.
together, make it public, maybe find a few sponsors from your connections.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, that's where my mind went immediately when thinking
Mhm.
about like what you're trying to do next.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
would
that's
I would say come to the States. Like I would easily find enough people to attend something like that. But
right.
it's I know some schools are doing that here in the States. There's no funding really behind it. It's normally like professors judging it who've never run a business before.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you're looking for that next investment.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I'll definitely reach out to you after this podcast for that. So just to, get the ball rolling. It's a great idea. Um, the execution will be difficult because it's, you realize there's so much there's so much nonsense out there, right? And you got to find the good things to wade through what's good and what's bad is a difficult skill. And even I'm still learning to say, okay, what's good and what's bad. And really, most of the time, it doesn't come down to the idea and what you're investing in. It's the person. It's always the
Mm,
person. It's so you have to be a good judge of character. And that's a
right.
very difficult thing to do. And yeah, I'm still learning that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm still in the infancy
A
of
friend
that.
of
So,
mine is an investor of small businesses, and a really wise piece of advice he gave me was to do like a working partnership where like you work on a project together for like 3 6 months and you learn a lot, you know, before jumping into bed with each other, right? It's kind
mhm,
of like dating. Um, and that's I have a few partnerships
mhm,
myself, and I've that had I applied that rule, that would have saved me in some business partnerships that failed.
mhm,
Had I taken that approach, but the ones
mhm,
that I have retained, that it's really helped me out, and been lucrative for me as well. Uh,
mhm.
but
No,
yeah,
that's good. Yeah, no, that's really good. And it's talking about all the things that we can do as pharmacists, like even for what I do now, like I joined like our local pharmacist association here, which is the Pharmacist Association of Niagara Peninsula. So it encompasses like our
yeah, I
Niagara
saw
region
that.
here. Yeah, and with that, like, you know, before COVID, I mean, I feel like I was able to kind of step in really well because of my experience and how I've kind of built the company. But before COVID, it was quite a prominent association, and then COVID hit, and then nobody wanted to take up the mantle, so it was just basically one or two people kind of running the whole thing,
Mm,
and that's a huge task, and they couldn't do it. They couldn't keep up with it. So it kind of was lingering in no man's land until I joined on, and what I've done with that, like just modernizing it, launching a website. All they had was an email list, essentially, right?
oh man, that's
Yeah,
funny.
yeah. So yeah, simple as that. Just launching the website, and then
Hmm.
getting, and then from there, just talking to all the drug manufacturers as I can. And that was hours of LinkedIn calls. Another thing, which is just to do it right. And this is all,
Are you
um,
working full time too?
yes,
Do you have a
two
family?
kids, two kids. Yes, yeah,
You're a
yeah.
glutton for punishment, then, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, no, yeah. I think I'm just driven. Probably having an Indian parent helps with that. Being
Yeah, having
always,
parents that push you hard. Yeah, I can
yeah,
relate to that. Not the
yeah.
Indian part, but yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no. So like, I mean, what we're doing actually in is the 10th today. So in 11 days, we have our our conference. So we're doing. I've launched a conference for
Yeah, I
the
saw that on the
association,
website.
and it took in 5 months. I built the conference in 5 months, probably 89% myself, and with that, having 4 talks, 4 major sponsors for the talks, and then about 40 total sponsors from all these different manufacturers, and doing that from scratch, like completely from scratch. Starting when I joined the company, I wasn't really talking to drug manufacturers like that because that wasn't really my client base
Virtual
for what I
in
did at
person?
all. Right, I was in the travel industry, kind of. Right, so
Right.
uh,
Is this a virtual conference?
no, it's an in-person conference.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so in-person conference, and usually the lead time for these things are 18 months.
Right.
What everyone was telling me is like, and I was told like, yeah, you might get 10 to 15 sponsors, right? When you end up with 45 total sponsors and more reaching out now saying, hey, is it too late for us to join? It's it ends up you end up realizing that it's just again goes back to just ask, right?
Hmm.
You
Yeah.
call up. I literally sometimes called up, Google the drug manufacturing company because I don't have a contact with them. Call them up and say, hey, this is the general like customer service line, and say, I need an email. I needed somebody to talk to
Yeah.
here because I have an idea. Um,
Yeah.
and then they put me in touch with somebody. I say, hey, look, I'm planning this conference. I'm launching this. I want you guys to be a sponsor. And they're like, okay. They're like, I don't know what this is. And then as one or two say yes, and the
Yeah.
social media goes out with that, and it just balloons from
Hmm.
there.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the way it normally works.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, no, this is and going right back to you is I love what you've done. I mentioned that before. I'll mention it again.
Well,
Uh,
thanks.
I do listen to the podcast. It's engaging, and it's really interesting for those in our profession, and even those who are not in our profession. So, I got to kudos and hats off to
Well,
you
thanks.
for what you built here.
Oh, I appreciate that. It's a lot of fun. Yeah, a lot of lessons you shared today are things that have helped me on my journey too. Um, it's a dream to do what I do. I mean,
Mhm.
it, you know, I loathe the kind of typical pharmacist job, but
Mhm.
what I do on a daily basis is like, it's a dream. It's wild.
Mhm. Yeah.
It is so stinking cool what I get to do. And it's just the beginning.
Mhm.
So we'll see what
Yeah,
happens next.
that's right. Yeah, no, that's good. And thank you for having me on, and being patient with me with all the back and forth.
Oh,
And
it's fine.
I'm
No,
sure this
don't worry
happens.
about it.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's
No,
good.
yeah, no, it happens. In fact, I got sick in February too, and then I was sick in January. So
Mhm.
like, yeah, reschedules. It's not a big deal.
Mhm. Yeah, no, that's good. I'll leave you with this good story. This happened today. Okay,
Okay.
and it makes you think that you know to think outside the box is something anybody can do. So this happened today. So my wife calls me and says, "You won't believe what happened with my 8 month old. Uh, he he's in his bouncer, and I didn't even think he's capable of this thought process, but he's in his bouncer, and he found a way to pull himself out of the bouncer. Um, and the first time I guess he did it, when he pulls himself out, he hits the floor and it hurts him,
Mm,
right? So we raised it so he can't bounce himself out. So today my wife called me. She's like, "You'll never believe what this kid figured out." So I found him underneath the bouncer. All right, and we're like, how did he get there? What did he do? So she puts him in there and says, "Let me watch." So underneath the bouncer, we have this like pad. It's like this cushy pad so that his feet it's soft when he bounces.
right.
Well, he found a way to grab onto the sides, pull himself up, and then lean over, but use his feet to get caught in where the cloth is, so he doesn't fall. So he's leaning over, and I have a picture of this. It's hilarious. He's leaning over, and he grabs that cushion, brings it forward, so his head it's underneath his head, then lets himself drop and rolls over onto the floor. It's like
Eight
mind
months.
at 8 months. I was like, this kid
Okay, you got your
is
hands
gonna.
full.
I got my hands. All right. But yeah, he found a niche and he exploited it.
Hmm.
There you go. And yeah, thanks again for having me on, Alex.
Thanks for being here. I appreciate it. What a stinking cool story. I mean, who does that? Who creates a business and a few years later sells it? You know what I learned from this that I think you can walk away from as well is if you are interested in doing a business or really just improving your career, just look around and find what problems exist and what are urgent and demanding problems. One of my early on business ideas was to do talks, to be a keynote speaker and to talk about leadership. But I'll be honest, I didn't see a huge demand for that, and the demand that was there was from people who were Toastmasters approved speakers or they were on the speakers bureau, and I didn't have that, and I didn't really have a path to do that quickly. I pivoted. I took my skills and I saw the immediate need in my industry, which was pharmacists need career coaching. Pharmacists are looking to get out of their current job and do something way more fulfilling. There's a lot of problems out there, and there's a lot that exist in pharmacy. I think a lot of people pick problems that don't necessarily have a lot of demand. So, what I would encourage you to consider for the problems that you'd like to solve is thinking about who's trying to do this, who is attempting to solve these problems, who's willing to pay to solve these kinds of problems. There was just so many gold nuggets from Nishan's story that I thought, oh, brilliant. He picked the immediate need, right? Hand sanitizers, right? That was like the first thing to go out. Then he identified, oh, it's gowns, it's masks. And then it became about service and technology. All of these things were incredibly valuable at that time. It would have been a huge bummer to hear at the end of the story, like, oh, well, the business just died because no one needed our service anymore. No, he took the knowledge, the IP, the contracts, and he sold all of that to the next person. Brilliant. Brilliant. Another great lesson that I need to hear often is just ask. There are so many people out there who probably could use your help, whether it's a job, whether it's a project, or maybe it's a business service. Who knows? But you won't know until you ask. Nishan didn't really dive into this all that much. The way I walked away from his story was like he spent a lot of time reaching out to people and talking and getting a lot of no's, or I don't know anyone, or I don't know how to help. But I think when you're starting on a journey like that, you often fear rejection so much that you don't even want to talk to the person. Like the pain, emotional trauma, or whatever baggage you hold about rejection, you take that with you and you're like, oh, I can't even reach out to a person. They're going to say no. I think a lot of people in our coach program even really struggle with reaching out to people they've never met before just because they're afraid that they're not even going to look at their message and they're going to judge them about it. But if you don't ask, you'll never know. If you're on this journey, if you're someone who's like, yes, I want to figure out how to do more fulfilling work, I'm inspired by Nishan's story, and I'd want to get started, we would love for you to be in our community, in one of our coach programs, and helping you make tons of progress to that end. It's honestly our joy. Some of the coolest guests we've had on our podcast are our coach clients who have started with us and have grown these amazing 6, 7, and 8-figure businesses now. And it's so cool to see the impact they're making, the clients that they have, the stories. I mean, it's amazing, but you won't know until you get started. The best way to get started is by talking with one of our career advisors. Our team is gifted at helping you plan and strategize what your next steps are and to share more about our coach program. Our coach program is all about helping you get, really whatever you want. Whether that's like a remote job, a pharma job, doing career exploration, learning what else is out there, where you fit in the marketplace, or even starting up your own business or growing something that you currently have. We love helping pharmacists ultimately just live their best life. Work shouldn't be this thing that's full of dread or misery or frustration. Your work should be fulfilling and, of course, challenging and not without its problems. But the work that we have dedicated ourselves to is helping pharmacists make the most of it, making every opportunity happen. We love doing that with you in groups and in one-on-one sessions, and ultimately getting success, whether that is growing a business beyond what your expectations, or even something as simple as getting a new job that you find fulfilling. Thanks for watching this episode. And until I see you in the next one, take care.